Convene this June 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Centreville Town Council. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll get started as usual with a review of the minutes from May 19th, 2022. Any changes or a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
It's just you and me,
Here.
Bud.
Minutes are approved
Like the
as
old
presented. And we will move quickly into citizens forum. Citizens are requested to keep their comments to 3 minutes. Carolyn
read
will read
mine?
it. Sure.
Welcome to this meeting of the Centreville Town Council. This is a public meeting and we welcome your participation. By attending, you acknowledge that this session is recorded and aired live on QAC-TV 7. During the meeting, we ask that you turn your cell phones off and hold personal conversations outside the meeting room. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The Town Council respects and appreciates your desire and right to convey your message freely, and in keeping with the dignity of proceedings, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. If questions are a part of your comments, we'll refer those to the appropriate individual. Thank you.
Have anybody signed up?
No.
I do?
No.
Let me go check.
No.
I know we have some emails, I believe.
Yes, we do.
And we'll apply the same 3-minute standard to those as we
Okay.
do
I don't think any of them are over, but I'll set the timer. Okay, I just have them. Here we go. Dear Centreville Town Manager, Clerk, and Council, as a prospective Centreville resident, I am writing to express my support for the Carter Farm Neighborhood Development Project. I'm looking forward to investing in the neighborhood, town, and county as a homeowner. The Carter Farm neighborhood will bring attractive housing and amenities to Centreville, further enriching all the area has to offer. I am attracted to the sustainability and environmental integrity underlying the project and look forward to seeing the lovely Carter Farm property back to life in a way that will bring such benefit to Centreville and the Eastern Shore. Regards, Carolyn Wapnick, Allen Street, Asheville, North Carolina. Dear Town Council members, I have owned a second home in Centreville for over 20 years. It is one of the Little Captain's houses located on Corsica Street. I'm now nearing retirement and considering Centreville as a permanent residence. I'm very excited about the agri-hood development and pocket neighborhood on the site of Carter Farm. The proposed development has everything I'm looking for in retirement, including a walking community with living streets, nature trail, and walkability to the center of town, open space farm and farm stand, possibility of a farm-to-table restaurant so I don't need to drive to Chestertown, low-impact conservation neighborhood with more green space than hard space, close proximity to the water and natural habitats, additional retail space to complement the farm and downtown businesses. I hope this project moves forward as planned. I would be happy to become a more meaningful contributor to Centreville's tax base. Susan Leidlich, I hope I said that right, 212 Corsica Street. From Steve Layden, 309 Windsor Avenue in Centreville, I am generally in favor of the project for its innovative clustered land plan, open space trail that is available to the general public, and state-of-the-art stormwater management system. I have one technical question. Can the area of growth allocation be reduced? If I understand the application correctly, the project is roughly 47 acres in size and 40 acres of growth allocation is being requested, using rough numbers. It appears that the farmed portion of the parcel is included within the 40 acres. I would suggest that growth allocation is not necessarily here and that it would be better left as LDA for 2 reasons. First, it leaves more growth allocation in place for the town to use on future projects. Second, it limits future development on the farmed portion of the lot to preserve the cluster nature of the overall development. Thanks for considering my suggestion. Dear council members, I have been a resident in Centreville for over 28 years with an interruption to attend college and pursue a career. I have benefited from growing up here and know the importance of close-knit community, the value of knowing your neighbors, and living a simplistic lifestyle. I deeply value the open space of a rural community as a result of growing up in Centreville. Like many children, I learned to swim in the pool. At the farm due to the generosity of the Carters to allow the Red Cross to provide swimming lessons. It is a special place with much history that needs to be respected and preserved. The Carter Farm project aligns strongly with the small-town values instilled in me growing up here. It preserves the agriculture, the house that is iconic to Centreville as you drive down Chesterfield Avenue, open space, responsible, sustainable development that respects the land and the waterways that border it, small businesses that will complement the farm and all residents without competing with other small businesses in town, and neighborhood design that promotes residential connection. This project is special like Carter Farm, and I wish to be a homeowner in this future community for these reasons. Thank you for your time and support of this project. Sandy Huffer, 200 Corsica Street. Council, thank you for the recent email update regarding town happenings, as well as updating the town's website to include the Carter Farm development documents. We appreciate the outreach and communication. Tonight you are discussing the growth allocation ordinance, but I would ask that you hold off introducing this ordinance until the many public concerns regarding the density and siting of the proposed commercial component of that development are reviewed and go before the Planning Commission and all concerns addressed. The size and location of the commercial component is inappropriate and should be modified to comply with underlying T&D zoning, which states that any commercial development on this site should be sized and located to serve the needs of that development. The developer has stated that they are unwilling to move the commercial component from directly on Chesterfield. If that is allowed to stay, the viewscape of this street will be destroyed. There are two recent examples on Chesterfield where the town required several configurations of their site plans and elevations to ensure the integrity of Chesterfield would be maintained, should the town follow its codified design standards. On slide 23 of the developer's May 29th council presentation, they are proposing to use 100% of the remaining sewer allocations. Every remaining allocation the town has. Hard stop. To commit to all the remaining capacity to one project is short-sighted, and you should wait until you find out about the funding of the new wastewater treatment plant until approving any further requests or negotiating further. One of the firm requirements has always been the perpetual preservation of the Carter farmhouse. It was stated by a citizen at the last meeting that a recent tour of the farmhouse showed a considerable leak. I urge you to require the developer to ensure the town that the farmhouse is protected from the elements, and if it does have any leaks, etc., that they be addressed immediately. Our inspectors should be permitted to visit the property, inspect it for leaks and structural damage. This project is totally discretionary, and until you and the public are satisfied that all the concerns are satisfactorily addressed, that this project will enhance life in Centreville, I urge you to not approve any more steps in the process. Thank you for your time. Tim McCluskey, 201 Watson Road. My name is Wendy Hubert, and I live with my husband and 3 children at 306B Chesterfield Avenue. We are new in town and very grateful to be part of such a special community. I am writing to ask if the town would consider requesting Phase 1 and Phase 2, if necessary, archaeological study as a requirement for the Carter Farm IDA zoning. This would not delay development, especially if it's done in the near future. While the site is not being farmed or built on, it would also While the site is not being farmed or built on, it would also not prevent development. If the site is found to have historical and cultural value, the response would simply be mitigation, meaning gaining information from the site before it is then developed according to plans. I feel this is very important because the Carter Farm site is a non-renewable cultural resource. Once it's built on, we lose any knowledge of what lies beneath the plow zone. Phase 1 and 2 surveys are minimally invasive and would reveal incredible information about not only the colonial and post-colonial timeframes of this area, but also the underrepresented people who live there, including enslaved and Native American populations. The Carter Farm site is so beautiful, it's easy to see why the town's earliest residents settled there. Because of the site's topography and access to freshwater and estuarine food sources, it's likely that it was also a very attractive seasonal campsite for late woodland and contact period peoples who we know lived between Centreville and Kingstown. These different settlements would have great storytelling and educational power if woven together to illustrate the changing uses of the land. I am not a historian or a scientist or even a local, but I have the greatest respect for you and for this town and would be happy to make introductions to a cultural resources consultant who would advise on the pricing and timing of a survey. Thank you for your consideration. Wendy Hubert, 306B Chesterfield Avenue. That's all I have.
Thank you. Move into, anybody else want to speak to citizens forum? There'll be another one at the end of the meeting as well. We'll move into appearances now. Mr. Warren Wright, please come on up. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Welcome to Centreville.
Oh, okay. A rose between two. Okay. Hey, good evening, members of the council. We're here to seek permission for our annual QAC Goes Purple, September the 10th. It's our kickoff celebration of the month-long group of activities. And with me are Linda Friday, the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce of Queen Anne's County, and her co-partner, Tracy Wilson. And we are, I should give you a little bit of background. The Drug-Free Coalition is in its 22nd year. The goal has been the same for all 22 years. DFC promotes healthy and safe communities by reducing alcohol and other drug use and misuse. We always have an emphasis on young people. We are fact-based and data-driven. The Purple activity is just one of the things that the Drug-Free Coalition does every year. This is our 5th year. Offshoots from the DFC have been many school activities throughout the years, concerts, town halls. We've got a lot of speakers that brought in. Centreville did the largest activity that we've ever did, although we didn't do it, we just stood by it financially, and that was a haunted crack house a couple years ago. We did nothing but finance it. All of these activities and the related agencies and individuals and groups that partner onto that, that's all done during September. And again, I hate to say it because I'm the one that puts up the banners. We'll be putting up those 200 and some banners all over the county right before September starts. We would very much like to get rid of doing that, but as the facts show, that's a very effective way if you change the information. Centreville, we did all of this the first 3 years on Kent Island. We thought that after that time we should move it up to the county seat, and so in preference to that, we usually attend all of the national nights out. We give away stuff, but we never done Centreville, so we did that. And I was talking to the chief, and I said, this is really a great crowd. Everybody seems to be having a good time, and so we thought that would be a really great place to have it. And the courthouse was about half scraped off, so it looked pretty good too. So last year, we did that, and I should first paraphrase by saying that the Chamber of Commerce, we conned them into doing the organization for the QA Goes Purple, the kickoff. They evaluate the programs and they change the programs and improvement. All of you know how well the Chamber of Commerce of Queen Anne's County does everything, and we are confident the quality for this will be the same as the quality of the September the 8th, 2021 Centreville Town Council QAC Goes Purple kickoff. If you weren't there, I don't doubt that all of you were there, but if you did not happen to be there, you can go to YouTube. Queen Anne's County Goes Purple, Centreville 2021, September the 8th. It's about 30 minutes. Nice stuff. We'll probably have about the same speakers. That also usually includes, you'll be happy to know, a selected member from the town council, whichever you guys decide you want to do that. Maybe some food and music this year, but we know we're going to have Linda's idea, which was the candlelight vigil. There'll be the usual giveaways. And the stage, as many of you recall, was just beautifully decorated last year. We'll have all the agencies come in to have their support stuff. Probably the trailer down to Kent Island Methodist Church, all of those things. We have already, the Chamber has already obtained active participation from the commissioners and from Recreation and Parks. Anything that was not great last year has been cut. The Chamber always makes everybody and everybody that works with the Chamber look good, and so we're happy that we've got them to do that again this year, to run everything so smoothly. A lot of other agencies and groups do related activities that DFC sometimes gets credit for, we don't really do. And that's kind of the best part of lasting 22 years. It's seeing things happen. I don't know if any of you have seen the Memorial Park or the trail. Have you seen the sports teams in purple? Have you seen emergency services videos? They say they're purple, but they do all of those all by themselves. It's really great stuff, and it's satisfying for me, being one of the 4 members that started 22 years ago, to see that all happen. But it just speaks to the kind of community that we all live in. The other thing is, and I just wanted to forewarn, in addition to opioid, the issue, we are including this year some community awareness about the unregulated CBD-related products that are being sold in Queen Anne's County, also in Centreville. It's a problem. We'll be sharing that information. We'll also be sharing the position paper on the legalization of recreational marijuana, the matter being on the November ballot. We believe it's not going to be the slam dunk they think it's going to be in Queen Anne's County. We think the people in Queen Anne's County are probably going to say, it's fine, but not here. Anyway, really happy to be coming back for Centreville. Thank you all very much. And last year we got enthusiastic support by the chief and his staff. We let him even keep the flag that we don't usually collect. So there you go. If you have any questions, we have the people here that can answer them.
I suspect we have consensus to give you the permission you need to
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
have Centreville go purple in September.
Thank you so much. It'll be fun. And I tell you, we really did, if those of you were there, that was really cool last year. And the weather cooperated, but it was really nice, because mostly it was Linda and her.
Well, thank you for what you all do.
Just real quick, just want to mention a couple things. So last year, we did the little flags that were on the metal things. We're not doing that this year. They didn't have the look that we were looking for. We did order additional, the feather flags. I think we ordered another 15 of those. So we're going to actually decorate the town more with those types of flags. And we'll be putting, Murdoch's will be putting those back on the meters and things like that. And we'll make sure that it's all cleaned up at the end of the month.
Wonderful.
So we do appreciate your support, and we hope that your staff comes out and supports the program, because it's really a great opportunity. And if you look at the boards, the numbers have dropped. So we're very, knock on wood, happy that that's happening. So we feel like we do have an impact.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move into some old business here. We'll start with Ordinance 7-2022, the text amendment for convenience stores. I'm going to have Councilperson Kaiser, the sponsor of that, read that.
Sure, one second. This was the text amendment. I'm just going to summarize it if that's cool, Council President. That would allow, change the allowable size of a convenience store in town, which is currently 2,000 square feet, to a maximum of 5,500 square feet in areas other than the central business district in town. We referred it to the Planning Commission, and they sent back an unfavorable recommendation.
Thank you. Any discussion about that? There's a public hearing that will be scheduled June 23rd.
Yes, do have a comment about that. So that has been scheduled, advertised. It'll actually go out in tomorrow's paper. I received an email today from Joe Stevens requesting that the hearing be delayed, as he has 3 other Board of Appeals hearings that same night with the county. Would not be able to attend. So I told him I would bring it to the council for consideration.
There's only 3 of us here tonight. I don't think Shelby's joined. I'm not inclined to delay, but that's one vote.
I would like us to I'm okay with whatever we decide on this one. I would prefer we delay. I would like us to, in the future, as a business practice, if we have an entity that's requested something like a text amendment, to check on their availability before we go forward and schedule the hearing, because I think that's a disservice to the people who requested it, that they're not going to have their legal representation here. And so I think just as a business practice, if we know they're represented by counsel, we should probably be reaching out to them before we schedule a hearing.
Yes, I agree. They should have their counsel here.
So we're delayed? We're delaying?
Yeah.
All right. Then it will be, we've reconfigured our July schedule.
And I did let him know the next meeting for the council would be the 21st of July, so I can confirm with him that that date works, and we will probably put a cancellation notice in next week's paper, and then next month we'll re-advertise.
I'm just going to note for the record, we are doing a lot of this canceling of hearings. I feel like we've done a lot of this. And I don't think it's a great practice to be advertising and canceling hearings in the paper. And, well, I appreciate wanting to, make sure their counsel is available. I mean, they are one stakeholder group, and yeah, I don't know.
For me, I think both these instances that we've decided to cancel a hearing, the issue has been not doing the right thing on the front end. And so, to me, we have to get better about what we do as a council on the front end of these hearings so that we're not scheduling them at all without being prepared.
All right, we'll move on to ordinance 9-2022. Actually, let's, I think, swap in ordinance 8-2022 FY23 budget consideration, which I will read. An ordinance for the purpose of adopting a budget for the town of Centreville for fiscal year 2023. We can pass this tonight, and I think, obviously, the fiscal year begins between now and our next meeting, so probably is good of us to pass the budget for fiscal year 23 tonight.
We have deadlines to the state before before our next meeting, so.
Yes, so I'll make a motion to pass, to consider ordinance number 8-2022 approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, budget is approved. And I just want to say thanks to the town staff, Karen, especially for you for all your work.
Yes.
We had a number of public workshops to develop this budget, and I would encourage folks to participate in those in the future and at least tune in and see what we're working on. You'll find that this is not the federal budget. We are not spending wasting inordinate amounts of taxpayer dollars on things. This budget funds the essentials and includes no new full-time employees at this point. So, all right, we'll move into 9-2022. An ordinance, I guess we haven't had a first reading yet, but we'll move into discussion now of ordinance 9-2022. Really, the thrust of this is to start to put together the conditions for growth allocation with the Critical Area Commission. How do we want to proceed? I'm going to lean heavily on the town attorney for best process on the way forward. We obviously have some questions we've talked about at our last council meeting. I know we've all been thinking about this a great deal between now and then. So do we just jump right in and have a conversation, or?
I think so. I mean, certainly if there's information you need before you do your own deliberation and discussion, you solicit some of that information. Or if you're ready to start discussing now, then it'd be fine to do that too.
I'd be curious the answer to the question that came up in citizen comment about the growth allocation and the farm part of the property. Do you know the answer to that, Sharon?
I mean, whether we could do that, I think in theory we could. I don't know if there's anything that would preclude it from happening that way. I don't know if the applicants had a reason for requesting it for the entirety of the property or not.
Can LDA be fully, sort of an in-holding within a broader IDA?
I think so.
Okay. so it doesn't have to be contiguous with other LDA.
It's actually the opposite. IDA has the requirements that it has to be next to either other IDA or LDA, but I don't think that LDA can't be
Okay.
next to all IDA.
So this will be a 5-acre parcel inside of,
Right.
bring the request down to 40,
It'd be like
35?
35.37, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah. Okay. I thought that was I appreciated that comment. So I think our questions have kind of focused around, and if anybody wants to correct me, please do, HOA specifics, public or private, ownership of the streets and sewers, traffic, and the commercial component. Am I missing anything, or the?
Trail.
Some marketability, I think, too.
We had consensus on
We
the
had
trail.
consensus on public ownership of the trail and buffer. What
I
was
think
it?
it was marketability.
Marketability, that's right.
Yes,
yeah.
that was the other one, yeah.
So of those, I mean, do you feel like they are all ripe for growth allocation consideration, or do they come in some other point here? Some other point of the process?
They're all certainly could be a condition to the growth allocation, whether you want to decide those now or defer them to later in the process is up to you. They could come in later as well. Things that potentially could affect the design of the site plan might be better to know up front, so that they don't continue down the process for a path that is going to be totally undone later in the process. So just to not waste everyone's time, energy, money, it'd be better to know some of those things now, I think, but.
Does it mean, we're missing 2 members here tonight, which could change the dynamics of these votes. So I guess the question is, do we, we can wait and make these decisions, although it's going to be quite some time, July 21st.
We have a 23rd meeting.
June 23rd is your next meeting.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we didn't cancel that meeting.
Right, just the one little part of it.
We just moved it back a week.
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking. Okay. So I guess the question becomes, do we discuss tonight and wait?
I mean, has Shelby joined? No?
No.
Still no? That's what I figured. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think some of these felt pretty consensus-y to me. I don't know. I mean, we want to discuss them.
Well, things that affect the site plan will be the size of the commercial and its placement on Chesterfield. So where are we on that issue?
For me, I would want to table that until site plan discussion. At this point, I'm not interested in putting a condition on them about the size or location of the commercial.
Even though it could affect the site plan? It could affect the site.
Yeah.
Okay. Public and private ownership of the streets. So for folks that have maybe not been tuned into this, the current site plan is 2/3 public, 2/3 private, 1/3 public. The first 2 phases of residential are private, and the third phase is public. Does the council have any opinions about that?
I don't really feel strongly about it at all, so I'm okay with their proposal at this point for me. I don't want to see us make it all public necessarily, because then why did we pass that whole Wooner thing? Because we wouldn't probably allow that anyway. So I'm okay with the current proposal.
I think it needs to be all public. That's my opinion. So the roads get taken care of.
I do as well. I think it ought to be all private as well, or, excuse me, all public as well. I think this is a time bomb for the town of Centreville. You look at other private entities within municipalities, they're not thriving, and I think it drives an HOA fee that is not sustainable. I think we ought to table the decision on that until we have our full complement of council members. I wouldn't want to drive a vote on that with 3 of us tonight. Traffic, well, I'd like to see fully renewed traffic study.
Ditto.
Don't want to hear any more about 2016.
It's 14, it's even worse.
2014.
14. And one of the things that keeps coming up in all the public comments is traffic is an issue, traffic is an issue. We already know that Chesterfield is a big problem with the school there every day, twice a day. We've heard rumor about, and I'd love to have Kip's thinking on this, we've heard rumor about reform for the traffic, some kind of solution to traffic happening there. Do we know what that looks like?
I believe Eric has been the one who's been kind of working with.
Yeah, talking to-
Yes,
Can we, respectfully, we be part of the conversation?
you got to come up here, yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for allowing us to be part of the conversation on these important topics. I think what we're interested in doing is we'd like the growth allocation process to continue. We also would like to go back to Planning Commission. We were not allowed to go back to Planning Commission to resolve some of these other issues of commercial appearance. We have answers to those. We have responses to the Planning Commission's concerns from December, which we've really never been able to go back and talk to them about. So, I sort of think of this as council has concerns, Planning Commission has concerns. If we could go back to Planning Commission in July, we could start that process to resolve things. And also give more information to council about their concerns, marketability, traffic, some of these other things. So, we respectfully request that perhaps we could have a first reading of the growth allocation ordinance, but also we'd be allowed to go back to the Planning Commission in July to present answers to their concerns. So, and in terms of, the commercial, we do have responses to the concerns of.
Sorry, but can we just have you guys answer the things that we bring up instead of just this spill out of what you think we might want to hear about? I would appreciate
Well,
that.
no,
'Cause
I
we
was-
sort of have a list of what we want to discuss.
Well, I was going through your list. The commercial was mentioned, so I was just responding to that. Public versus private. Is that okay for me to respond to what I just
We're
heard?
just catching up, but if you want us to focus on traffic, we can respond to
Yeah.
traffic, which is underway.
Yeah, we were in the middle of a conversation about
So
traffic.
let's respond to traffic.
Okay. Yeah, we've authorized the traffic study to be redone. They are doing the counts, as I understand it now. So that's happening.
Good.
I think you
Public,
need.
private, you wanted to talk about,
Just one more thought on traffic, and Ernie's been closer to that consulting contract, but as we all know, the school is the impactor in getting accurate counts based on when school's in session, and then also some of the solutions that had been, I think, discussed and are to be implemented in the fall with the school will all have a factor on those traffic counts also. So I think we all want accuracy. And so I think the big issue for us has been, what's the right timing? We're under contract. We just want to make sure we have accurate analysis. And so I just want to mention that because I think it's in all of our best interests. And so the timing is kind of the,
But we're proceeding now.
we're doing
So we're going to
counts
have kind of
now.
the worst
Okay.
case, scenario.
so on Chesterfield or other impacted intersections?
All the various intersections that were previously studied.
And what are those?
I don't have the study in front of me right now, but I can,
We'll have to get back to you on that.
yeah.
The condition I envision would be requiring a commitment from them to complete a traffic study. So it sounds like that would be easily met by the developer.
Absolutely.
That applies to, I think, certainly Broadway and Liberty
Yeah.
and any other,
Watson Road.
Watson Road?
Yeah, Watson, it's gonna be going
Sure.
down there. Corsican Neck Road.
There's actually a process where the traffic engineer sends a letter to the town to approve the exact points. So that should be in the mail or coming any day now.
Good, good.
So,
That's exciting.
yeah.
So just to clarify then, the condition would be that there be a study and that we use that information as the process unfolds, not to stop the process until the study is done, is what I want to make sure I'm hearing, that's what I'm hearing. Because to do the study,
To me, it would be the commitment to do the study, because a traffic study takes a long time. We certainly want all the necessary information, but I agree with you. I don't want to hear about that whole study anymore. I mean, it has like no bearing on reality.
well, I just want to confirm, we referred to it simply because we hadn't started the study, because we hadn't.
This is the first time that I've ever heard about a brand-new traffic study.
Ditto.
Oh, no, that was always the intent. I mean, that's what we've always talked about. We just didn't, we wanted to get the timing right to make sure it was done at the right time.
And present
We just were
climate-
using what we had before as a reference point, but it was never our intent to just always lean on that.
Okay, that's good.
I think some of the challenge here is that there's a lot more happening that you're obviously aware of than you've made us aware of. And
We don't have
and
to
these
do
growth
that.
allocation conditions will help that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that because of the changes that I think Commissioner Johnson's discussed with the Board of Ed, they're planning to implement in the fall. Initially, we were thinking we would do the counts in like October after those traffic patterns had maybe adjusted. But we didn't want to be caught in July without having school counts. So we've initiated counts so we get traffic counts under the current conditions and we can provide that those analyses. It may be better when those modifications are made later.
Yeah, well, the conditions ease in 10 days.
That's right, which is why the urgency to get counts conducted so that we have that data and aren't stuck waiting
Right.
for school to start.
Okay, good. I want to come back to this public-private. I mean, we have two council members tonight that want to see this all public. I just don't think it works. I just don't think it works long-term financially for the well-being of this town.
Well, let me, if I could just recount a little bit of the history. The Planning Commission did recommend that parcel 3, which represents almost half, really, in terms of unit counts, be public. We then met with TAC and adjusted the site plan to include a turnaround, and we widened the streets in parcel 3 with the understanding then that we satisfied the serviceability with the vehicles, the public vehicles. So we thought we were complying or answering the concerns of the town regarding this. The other aspects are that, we feel that, again, it's, parcel 3 doesn't have the private wooners, so it looks like a public, typical, TND neighborhood more closely.
So I want to interrupt you. I think we get all that. I think
Okay.
we've been through that.
All right,
The concern I've got is linked to the HOA number that we talked about last time, which is that in this budget we just passed tonight, there's $1 million for repaving Belvedere. $1 million to repave a street that's 2,000 yards long, and we have a $780 a year estimate on HOA fees, which actually is the number we talked about last week, or 2 weeks ago, that $107,000 number wouldn't apply to the Phase 3 fully, as you just said. More than half, or almost half, of the full development wouldn't even be paying that $780 freight on HOA. I just don't know how this HOA pays in the long run to maintain these roads and maintain the sewer lines that are under them. At that rate of burn, I just don't see it. And I see 15 and 20 years from now, which is what we have to be worried about, when you guys are long gone, when we're long gone, this community, this HOA is saying, we can't afford to do this.
well, there's two things I'm hearing there. One, with parcel 3, those are all gravity sewers, okay? They have no pumping stations whatsoever. So that's where we were proposing those be public. And again, the streets we widened, they're not wooners, they're, typical streets. Those would be public. To answer the questions in more detail about HOA fees, we're engaging with a manager. It gets a little complicated because each parcel, 1A, 1B, 2, 3, A, B, and C, they have different attributes in terms of the costs. And, Ryan advises us that those can be apportioned fairly, among the members. So what is most likely is that in 1B, which has the Wooners and Common House and stuff, their HOA fees are going to be higher. But in 1A, which is very simple, just has a couple small Wooners, it's going to be much lower, okay? So we're working, the name of the company?
Century Management is a
Right.
professional HOA management company.
So we've started this analysis, breaking this all out. It's a pretty complicated looking spreadsheet, but we're also looking at the reserve replacements. Because in the HOA fee, you have to have a replacement reserve for the Wooners for, whatever they're maintaining. And then we're looking at the 20-year accumulation. We're looking at the life cycle expectancy of all that. So we're analyzing all this in much more detail, and we'll hope to have that finished in the next few weeks. So we are working on it.
So I just want to make sure, once again, I'm clear. The primary concern is related to ensuring that that the HOA fees don't become too high or there's a problem down the road. I think to understand if that's the primary concern.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Rick, but my primary concern is the financial well-being of the town of Centreville.
Okay,
And
thank
so,
you.
so
Okay.
I'm not speaking for everybody here. If you can find people that'll pay $1,000 a month homeowners association fee to live there, God bless you, right?
Okay.
But my concern here is that and this reflects, I think, throughout all these, marketability. The reason why we're concerned about marketability is because we're worried about whether or not there's a long-term demand for this style of living to support this HOA. And if you're talking about, they can't move these properties because people don't want to live 500 feet from the parking lot, then this whole model falls apart. If you can't sell the house, nobody's going to be in the HOA.
So that's why I just want to be clear that it's really an HOA and fee and those types of issues related to this versus the street. Because right now the streets are designed according to this Wooner standard that was adopted through the amendment to the subdivision ordinance. So let's just scenario, if those were all to be redesigned to meet public standards, that greatly changes. So this is something we do need to work out because that does greatly change.
Well, let's talk about that.
Let me kind of just finish that one thought though, because that's why I'm trying to differentiate the primary concern, because the change of the Wooner standard of those streets to a public standard, depending on whether or not we're using the alleys standard or which street standard we're using, does dramatically change everything from the amount of permeable paving to what we can fit in those areas and things like that. So I just want to, it's not to say we shouldn't.
Well-
I'm just saying that there is a little bit of a domino effect
We
there,
need
and I
to
want to
demonstrate-
understand the core
We need to
issue.
demonstrate that the HO fees are still manageable to you, what I'm hearing, for the Wooners neighborhoods, and that's what we're working on. We're going to be
Can I ask a
working.
question?
Yeah.
Is this our best chance to make all these roads public, or are there other opportunities that we would have if we didn't feel comfortable? Because for me, a condition on this HOA study that they're doing and the cost, and a condition of a marketability study would really change the calculation for me about the public versus private. Because I don't want to, the reason I said I wouldn't vote to make them all public is because I understand that's going to blow up the neighborhood as it's planned. But I'm also not saying I think the neighborhood's viable until we have this other information. And
Yeah, these are all linked.
I am deeply concerned, and I have said this from the moment I first met you, Rebecca, I am deeply concerned that the second generation buyer is just a human being that doesn't exist. And so I think a marketability study, if it proved that this is a viable neighborhood, and an HOA study that shows, one, what the cost would be, because your math just really doesn't make sense, and two, that would be included in a viability study for marketability, because I'm not buying somewhere with $1,000 a month HOA fee, just to make sure that, you know, that buyer does exist. That would make me feel comfortable about the streets. I don't know if it would make other council members feel comfortable, but are there other points in this process where we could say, you know what, you have not provided adequate information to us, and so we are going to take these streets?
There are, but it's, will totally cause such a redesign that the sooner they would know that, the better, I think. If your decision was these have to be public road standards,
Yeah.
then it doesn't make sense to spend
Right,
a
no,
lot
I
of time
understand
going
that.
down the other paths with it designed as it is. And I don't want to speak for Kip, but I think the town is not set up to have Wooners become
Right,
public
no.
roads in the future.
No,
So,
and the
Right, no, I meant in
ordinance we
the,
passed
yeah.
make, they're private.
yeah, no, I meant in the process, because for me, like, we've only had a couple weeks since we shared, you know, some of our concerns about HOA. It sounds like they've taken steps to try to gather that information for us, so I just am disinclined for us to put a bunch of conditions on based on the information we currently have. If the developer is willing to get studies done, I would rather us put conditions that require a whole bunch more information than totally blow up the project as it's planned.
Could I ask one more question in terms of the public street scenario? It was our understanding last year when we had these discussions around Wooners and whatnot, that it was the preference of the town to not have public streets in this development and to have them be private. And so I'm trying to make sure I'm clear that there is a openness at this point in time for all the streets to be public in this development.
If there were, I think, there was not willingness to have the Wooners be public.
Understood, but there was also.
I don't think there was any no objection from this council member to,
That's why I'm asking for
Yeah.
clarity, because it was
No.
my understanding last year when we were discussing all of this, is that there was a preference that these be private streets, whether or not the Wooner solution came out of that. But and I just want to be clear that if that's a scenario that's back on the table, that is what is being said under that scenario, that there is an openness to the town viewing these as all public streets if we were to end up going down that path for whatever reason.
Except the Wooners, right?
Well, but the Wooners would have to be redesigned. They can't be accepted right now because they're only a
Yeah,
street
but then
standard as a
that-
private street.
But then that creates, is no longer the pocket neighborhood.
Right, it changes everything, that's why I'm trying, but I'm trying to understand this scenario, because this scenario, if we can't, for whatever reason, prove to you there's market viability, which we believe we can, but the other scenario I'm hearing
Well, let's,
is that these
okay.
need to all be public streets.
I think what we owe you to answer your concerns are, I think, you know, as you just stated, a marketability study and an HOA study that addresses and shows, you know, that we're still viable with the HOA fees, that we have adequate replacement reserves to maintain those things that are not going to be publicly maintained, like the Wooners and the pumping stations, those things, okay? And we are working on those. We're consulting with the engineers, the manufacturers of pumping stations, the management company, so that we can accurately, and it gets kind of complicated because you have the different parcels. In terms of marketability, we've done some preliminary analysis, and you know, there are two of these clustered parking pocket neighborhoods nearby, one in Falls Church, one in College Park. There are many examples of these, you know, out west, and to the extent you would accept, you know, out west as being, you know, and the viability of those, we have documentation from a developer who's developed 30 of these types of pocket neighborhoods, mostly again out west, but not one of them has ever reverted back. He's been doing it for 35 years. Not one has ever reverted back to another form of, you know, neighborhood in terms of wanting to, you know, drive all the cars in the garages at their homes. Not one of them.
what is the scale of these other developments? So one of the ones that we first talked about when you guys first came to town, and Rebecca did a very good presentation on the vision of this site, was this Prairie Crossing in Illinois. And I've spent a lot of time on their website, and there's one of these in Phoenix as well, these agri-hood ideas, and I've done a lot of research. These the scale of what Carter Farm is dwarfed by the scale of Prairie Crossing. It is 500 acres.
Well, keep in mind, the neighborhood is not necessarily a pocket neighborhood or
Sure,
cluster.
yeah, no, I
Okay?
understand.
So, what I think I'm hearing is that the concern is more around the clustered parking approach rather than the agrihood, because they are different. You know, you can have an agrihood, in fact, Prairie Crossing is not a clustered parking arrangement, okay? It's an agrihood. Half of our units are agrihood, the whole thing is agrihood, half are clustered parking, half are TND, okay? So, the clustered parking approach that we'll be able to cite for you, they range in size from 25 to, I think, 45 or 50 units in a pocket, okay?
In a cluster.
In a cluster. And what we're proposing is essentially 2 clusters of those kinds. One of which we do have 15 interested buyers at this time. We have not marketed parcel 2, but we believe when we talk to the National Organization of Co-housing, which are, more of the clustered parking, there's a very strong demand, even nationally. So we owe you the marketability study and the HOA study. We're working on them.
These are just some initial information.
Right.
It's not the full study, obviously,
Yeah,
but just to
and
give
this-
you a little bit of
with-
what we've been digging up.
And what this shows is, there haven't been a lot of resales in these, there's one, but it shows the original purchase prices, and then the assessed value changes. There's also some Zillow, Redfin, and Trulia estimates. And for these 2 developments, you have a picture of the typical home, and you have the site plan showing the clustered parking nature.
You're not going to use these estimates in your marketability study, right? Because they have like no basis in reality.
Pardon me?
A Zillow estimate or a Redfin estimate, they're based on nothing.
Yeah,
So
no,
that's not
I understand. It's
Sale
just
prices,
another data
the
point.
actuals.
Their HOA fees are $469 to $484, so that gives you some indication of, of course, we have a different scale and whatnot, but that's just some data points we currently have. We'll reinforce that more with other data throughout the country and try to find additional East Coast examples.
I do want to just be honest. This is a different kind of product. The notion that it's an agrihood, really, with also this clustered approach, you're not going to find any specific comparable. What we're going to be doing is trying to put together a set of comparables that are reasonable scale, markets, and a variety of factors that, can all be compared, but there's nothing like Carter Farm. And I think the scale of Carter Farm and the approach to it was to ensure that there was a diversity of housing type and size, which is probably one of our biggest factors in ensuring, because it's not like Northbrook that there's so many houses that you're doing a lot of all the same. You're doing basically a mix of different types that actually is another factor in terms of sort of ensuring that there's a lot of marketability rather than a lot of the same. Right. So I just want to, so we can do it. I just want to manage expectations of, there is no prototype. We're trying to do something and it actually is.
Yeah, we also have
That's
a
the
study.
nature of our questions. I sort of want to be clear, it's not a hostility to the project.
Yeah.
It's sort of the due diligence of not being the guinea pigs here. The town bears the risk here, right? The town bears the long-term risk of a clamor to vitiate the HOA and come back under the town auspices with public roads 25 years from now.
Right.
And so I think if we don't ask these questions now, which I understand, you may not want to answer, or they're hard to answer, I'll rephrase that.
They're hard. I just want to make sure there's qualifiers that, we can't tell you, nobody knows. Nobody knew what the market was going to be 3 years ago before COVID, right? And so we can give you the best possible information that's out there, and we are in the process of doing that. I think in any housing or economic development of any kind, diversification is your biggest, way of avoiding risk, because when you have diversification, it ensures that there's not all of one being the same, and then you saturate the market with one same thing.
Yeah, and our planning commission is drafting, refreshing our comprehensive plan while we speak, so, and one of the things we just talked about last night was this notion that we should be moving our neighborhoods in the direction of diversity, diversity of affordability and housing style, and not
Right.
sort of limiting them to a single generation, for instance. So I think this development checks all those boxes.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed.
You'll appreciate this. I used the Simpson Index actually for a diversification metric that I wrote for LEAD for neighborhood development. And so when you apply that index to housing types and style, it actually is one of your best ways. And so we've tried to, within the scale of this development, be thinking about it from that diversification standpoint, and meeting those types of requirements, just as you would in
Yeah,
an ecosystem.
that's really what generated the parcel 3 approach, was that, desire for diversity and housing types. We have the condominium, the townhomes, and then again, the single family. We'll also be making available this study. This was done by a national co-housing group, surveying 20 different communities, coming up with mean, median HOA fees. It's about 5 years old, but again, we're in the process of assembling a whole lot more data to answer your concerns.
I just want to make one comment about the streets. When the project went through TAC, the Wooners pretty much had been, so TAC's comment, the Technical Advisory Committee comment, because they were private already, partially, staff wanted it either all public or all private, not a mixture. So I want to Rebecca's comment, it wasn't necessarily that we were saying all private, it was basically one or the other. We were not in favor of split,
Okay.
public and private.
So your recollection was not that there was an opposition to all public?
Not in opposition to all public, no.
Okay.
It was, I think when we got the site plan, the Wooner had already, the text amendment had already started, was going through the process, and the site plan was for the Wooners and the private. And then when the phase 3 came in as public, we thought the whole thing was going to be private. It's, from a staff perspective, it's difficult for us when you have a development that is partial one way and partial another way, which we see in other areas in other developments as well. Mainly it's, why are they getting this, or why are they getting trash and I'm not getting trash, or from the staff perspective.
And I remember
So,
that discussion. I think what I'm trying to clarify now is that there's also a concern about all private, because the concern about all private.
Yes, from the council's perspective, yes,
Exactly.
I do understand.
So
I
it
totally
sounds
understand
like
that,
the
yes.
concern about all private as it relates to HOA fees leads us down this
Mm-hmm.
path of all public. So that's why I'm trying to clarify
I don't
whether or
think
not
that
that's even an option.
From a staff
Right.
perspective, and Kip can tell me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, I don't think we necessarily had a one way or the other. It was, we were in favor of all one way or all the other.
Right, and now council has concern of private, so I just want to be sure I have got the right information.
Yeah, I just recount that we had a discussion about changing the streets in parcel 3 to allow for public service. So I'm a little, but we welcome the opportunity to go back to TAC and, talk some more and resolve that in terms of their concerns, so.
We had a public comment come in about the archaeology of the site. What are, I guess I'm ignorant of the requirements, if there are any. And if there aren't any, what are your plans there?
We're not aware of any.
There's no requirements.
Yeah.
In this particular situation, and any past archaeological work that I've ever been involved with, the common sense approach is to usually leave it intact and not disturb. And so trying to understand those comments myself, because the idea is whatever's under there, you just don't want to disturb.
Yeah, I think.
And it's mostly around the farmhouse, which we've already committed to not disturbing those view corridors or the farmhouse itself, so.
Yeah, I believe the state has a listing of sites that are, potentially archaeologically sensitive, and this is not one of them, is our understanding, so.
And the trigger, if there's a federal action, so if there's a federal Corps of Engineers wetlands permit, that triggers Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So before any federal agency takes an action, they have to comply with Section 106, and that would trigger Phase 1 evaluation. But we're not going to have wetland impacts that will be significant enough to trigger the board's jurisdiction.
Thank you. The Carter Farmhouse, I'm curious what council, I mean, we've all driven by it. It's fallen down. And I'm curious what council thinks about what ought to be done there.
I don't feel comfortable personally putting a condition on the developers to do something about a house they don't presently own. And so I think whatever authority we currently have in the code to send in code enforcement, to send in the town manager acting as zoning administrator to deal with the current property owner as to the state of that house, I'm all in. But they don't own it. And so to ask them to do anything to it at this moment, I feel uncomfortable with, and also feel very uncomfortable, and I'm going to say this publicly, if you've been trespassing in that house to see what's happening in there, that you've taken that on yourself. And anyone who knows what's going on inside there has trespassed to find that information out. And so I think we've got to rely on our current code and whatever we can do with the current owner, in my opinion. I do not think you can ask someone who's not the property owner to do something to property they don't own.
You have a purchase agreement there, is that?
We have a purchase agreement, but don't own it yet. And obviously, approvals are a component of the decision to move forward with the purchase. We've been very clear from the beginning of this project that the intent is to protect and preserve the house. The approval process has taken candidly much longer than was anticipated at the beginning, and I haven't been in the house, but to the extent the house is degrading, one concern about having a condition is if it takes an extra 6 months, we don't know what condition, it may be in worse condition before we're in a position to have approvals and buy it and move into it. So there is a desire to protect it, preserve it. We think it enhances the property. But a condition that requires us to do something, particularly if it takes months and months longer to get to approval where we could be in a position to do something, is a concern.
Do you have any thoughts about the farmhouse?
I'm with Ashley. I think we should go, the current property owner should take care of it or address the issues if they find any issues, like.
Do we have, well, we don't have, I'm going to assume we don't have consensus because I don't agree with this. Do we feel like the farmhouse needs to be part of this plan, this site plan? I mean, restoration of the farmhouse? Which is not, I want to be clear, the Carter farmhouse is not the original farmhouse.
I have
It's
no.
1908, it's, that doesn't really rank as particularly old even within Centreville. And so, this may be sacrilege, I guess, in the neighborhood here, but I don't have a strong love for, or insistence on keeping the home there. But
Since we can walk to our cars together, I totally agree. I think it is not like it's the oldest building in town. Yes, it is what people for the last however many years are used to seeing as they come, my entire life, as you come down Chesterfield Avenue. I'd like to bring Centreville into a new century. And so if it's true that the roof is caving in and it's full of mold, some things don't last
More
forever.
a sentimental thing than a
Houses
historical
that sit
thing.
vacant die.
Yes.
I would feel, and I want to go on the record saying this, I feel much differently about Locust Hill, which is an old house, which is a tremendous amount of historic relevance there than I feel about the Carter farmhouse. And we've gotten a lot of comments. I suspect we're going to get a lot more. None of them have, not very few of them have sort of insisted on the farmhouse being front and center of the site plan. But
Yeah, I think people are very worried about the view as you come down Chesterfield.
and I'm very much concerned about
And
the
that
view.
I agree with too, but
Yes,
I am not so obsessed with that house that it needs to stay standing looking as it does today.
And I think it's going to become perhaps untenable. I don't, as Ryan just said, I think it could be untenable, and it could make, I think it's going to be expensive to restore. And so I'm all for the current homeowner being encouraged to bring the home up to standard.
I just feel really strongly about people's property rights too. And so that current owner does have certain rights to decide what happens with the property that they own. And
Yes, they do.
I just to require them, because some people like the look of that house. I get it. It is very sentimental, like Councilmember Keel said, but I think we just have to be cognizant of people's property rights as well.
Is there anything else folks want to talk about? The PUD was brought to my attention earlier today that the PUD requires or not requires, it suggests a 25% build out before the commercial can be undertaken. Is that something that we ought to be talking about here? Or do you think that's?
I think that's probably something you would then address in your PUD approval that'll come later.
Perfect, thank you. Is there anything else?
Okay.
No?
Rebecca has a comment on
The, Sharon and Ryan, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the amendments to the ordinance actually do not include that percent build out with the way the ordinance was amended, because I looked that up recently.
Okay.
And the problem we're having right now is, and Carolyn, maybe you can help out on this too, is I believe the current code online still does not reflect the amendments to the ordinance, because there's been a couple of other statements related to.
They should be, if you, on the one online, there's new laws.
Okay,
over. So
under new
we only codify once a year, which I'm
Okay.
at the end of the fiscal year, so I'm actually in the process now of codifying, so probably sometime in July, August is when the online will be uploaded. But when you go to the online code, they'll say new laws, there's like 21 of them. It's listed on the new laws.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I noticed one of the comments earlier today was also an error, because it's referencing TND, a reference that was based on the old version. And so the public, I suspect, doesn't know to go there and is still viewing the old version, not the amended versions, because I know that comment was an error based on the old version. And I believe the 25%, I don't have that in front of me right now either, but I remember looking it up, does not apply under the amendment to the development. So I just want to make sure we've all got accurate information in front of us, that's all.
Thank you. We'll get clarity on that.
Yes, I defer to the attorneys.
What does council want to move forward? We've got a request to move forward with a first reading tonight. Does we have consensus to do that with these? Sharon, do you want to sort of state conditions as you have them noted here? Or?
Well, so far, I think last meeting you talked about the condition regarding the public ownership of the trails.
Yes.
That was from last time. And then today, there was a condition related to having a traffic study, not necessarily having the results now, but there would be a traffic study performed and maybe some of the parameters of what intersections to look at. There was discussion of having, and I think they're already underway, the marketability study and the study of the information needed for the HOA financials, let's say it that way. So those were, I think, the conditions that I noted from those two meetings. Obviously, there was some proposed conditions that they had. I don't know if there's more that you wanted to discuss from their list.
What were those? Let me see.
We did talk about the farmhouse not being a condition, but.
Do we have those conditions here in our packet from last week?
Yeah, it's in this packet too.
The one that I emailed, it was in there, but that's in the email I said I didn't print out all the stuff from the last.
Right.
So it's the trail and buffer. And then I had the additional notes, some of which were about water, wastewater.
a condition related to the road stub for the Board of Education property. I don't know if if you're satisfied with the way they have worded it, or if we wanted to amend that wording. The way they had it worded, it was tied to if the Board of Ed property was developed when parcels 3B and 3C are, before they are commenced, then they would have this obligation, otherwise they would not.
And I think we had expressed some interest in just having them fulfill that obligation.
Right.
Irrespective of
Yeah,
Board of Education plans.
yeah.
Looking at the site plan might shed some light on this. You know, we look at the road stub, the service,
Different copies of the notes.
actually this road stub, this part right here will be built in response to parcel 3, along with these other streets, okay? And we put the turnaround, so the actual stub itself to the BOE property is very small. And, I mean, it could be built. We would just have to block it off or something so people don't go down a dead end. But we could also just do a public right-of-way, you know, because it's only maybe 50 feet or something at this point because of the turnaround that we did. So I don't know if it's a moot point or not, but it, you know, it kind of seems that way to me, so.
And we had actually made revisions, this plan reflects revisions that were made in response to TAC comments to actually include the turnaround
Right.
as this interim condition that was added in response to TAC comments. It was a stub previously, and we added this, which we think, which we agree, is a much better interim solution.
So at this
until-
point, if they built it, it would connect to nothing.
For future, maybe for future.
So I would not be in favor of that, only because the road to nothing in my neighborhood has become self-storage. It's bad. It's bad down there, guys. There's a car missing a wheel right now.
That's where I store my boat.
You and everybody else.
Much to Councilperson Kaiser's chagrin.
We're very comfortable dedicating a right-of-way to the property.
Yeah.
So the ability to extend it would always be there, but. Okay.
You could also get either bonding or money for whatever that
For the bond.
connection would
Yeah.
be, so that you can do it in the future when it makes sense to do it, but they will still have paid for it.
I like that idea.
Me too. Better than a road to nowhere. But I mean, I know that limits your boat parking, Steve, so.
Just to the property line.
It's only 50 feet is what we're talking about, so it wouldn't be a huge amount, but.
Yeah.
Regarding the buffer, I just wanted to circle back to that for just a minute. I just want to at least make you all aware of the history on that, is that we did, through the negotiation of the perimeter trail last year, with staff and former council president, and have plenty of records to show that the understanding and agreement as part of that was always a public easement. So just so you know, I understand everyone's strong feelings. We were kind of surprised because we had gone through the process with that understanding and documentation that it would be a public easement, and that had resolved, to our knowledge, concerns related to the intent of the green belt and the comp plan. So I just needed to share that because that's where we were of the understanding through the discussions that had happened last year. So it wasn't something that, that we intentionally avoided. It was just kind of where we got to through those discussions last year with
Yeah.
the town and the administration.
The
and
history
everyone.
was, we were proposing the multimodal trail. The town was insisting on the perimeter trail. We had concerns about the perimeter trail being in the backyards. When we came up with the idea of putting it, in the buffer, more in the buffer, provide a buffer to the backyards, and, CAC has reviewed that. That's, where we talked about, and you remember, town attorney, remember we proposed initially a leasing of that to the town, but then the town said, no, it has to be a right-of-way, a dedicated right-of-way.
Public
Which
easement.
we agreed to, a public easement, a permanent easement. So that's kind of how we got to where our thinking was, you know, that the buffer would continue to be private, but you would have this easement through there and would satisfy, at that time, it would satisfy the town's concerns. And, that was recorded in the minutes from the TAC, the official minutes from the TAC, that's not our minutes.
All of the approvals last year reflect the 15-foot public easement as part of that trail agreement that we had come up with last year. So I would just wanted to share that there's been an evolution of this. And it was a bit of a surprise, and, it does sort of change the nature of how we think about this project and its adjacencies and whatnot. It's different
That concerns me.
from what we had been led to believe was our understanding of, as of really with the fact that it was always a
But
public
I just want
easement.
Go ahead.
on what, and it might not seem that way, but I'm really supportive of the project. I wanted to see it move
Yeah.
forward. But you're starting to lose me, because on one hand, you're saying it's a permanent easement, so it's a public amenity, and on the other hand, you're saying it affects how you view the whole project. Well, if we own it, well, if in your eyes, the public easement is damn near the same, it shouldn't really affect you too much. And so, and also for me, we had consensus of everyone up here last meeting that the trail had to come to the town. I don't want to rehash this with you at every meeting
No,
until the
I'm
end of
not
time. I
asking
mean,
to
to me, that's a
rehash it.
settled issue.
I just felt it was important
Well,
to share that there was an
We're
evolution
talking about
that,
trail and buffer.
right, so the
So
trail is
the
a
trail
15
definitely-
foot.
Okay, well, whatever you want to call it, we're saying that a condition is going to be the trail and buffer both are going to be owned by the town. And to me, that's a settled issue for which the council's provided consensus. And oftentimes when we hear from you all, there's a story about something that staff told you a year ago. Great. But that's not the town council making the decision when it's at a decision-making point. And that's where we are now. And so it concerns me deeply that you guys seem so opposed to us owning the trail and buffer. Because to me, it's a non-starter without us owning it.
Let me dive in, because I've given thought to the ownership. I'm not here to change that debate or discussion at all. And I understand Rebecca's comments, but there are a couple of thoughts that I wanted, just nuances that I wanted to talk about. And one is the possibility of the HOA owning the land, from the landward edge of the trail in, whether that's 2 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, the trail varies as it goes through the buffer. One thing we don't want to see is the trail moved later and move right into the backyards of homes. The trail is sort of offset from the homes intentionally so that there's some screening from the backyards. We'd like the trail to stay where it's approved with the plan, and I don't know if the Critical Area Commission would let you change the trail.
So you're talking about the land from the trail inward toward the development would be owned by the HOA?
Landward.
Right, landward.
So from the landward edge of the trail to the water, owned by the town in fee simple, the trail in its entirety and all of the buffer beyond it. But from the landward edge of the trail to the backyard, to the rear lot lines, have that owned by the HOA so that the trail doesn't get moved. I don't think it's likely the town's going to spend the taxpayer expense to relocate it. But that would give us the ability to make sure that people, have some buffer between their property line and the public space. The second thing is we want to have the opportunity for 2 kayak launches. And so if the town owns the buffer, what we'd like to reserve are 2, and location would be coordinated with the Critical Area Commission in the town, but we'd like to reserve 2 access strips, essentially perpendicular across the buffer from the private ownership to the shoreline, where residents could take kayaks on a dolly or carry a kayak across the trail and down the slope to the water, where there would be whether it's a sloped gravel entry, whether it's a pier with a floating dock or something, so that people can get into a kayak. But the opportunity for those 2 areas for residents to cross the public-owned buffer and get to water access.
And you'd want that to be residents only, unlike the one that we have at Millstream, that's totally public kayak launch?
We think that because they are most likely located here and here.
I can't see, I mean.
I'm sorry. Most likely because of topography located here and here, which, which makes sense is, the residents of the community can get to that easily. There could be some kayak storage, either, on the private land here, if it's allowed in the CAC, in the buffer. But that's something that's pretty strongly felt by our buyers group. None of this was an issue when we thought the buffer would remain private, okay? We thought we could deal with this later, but.
Which is why we've never heard about it.
Pardon me?
Yeah, because if it was ownership, which our understanding had always been it was going to be we're not trying to change what was said last week. Our understanding
We hear you.
up until now was that this trail would be a public easement. Now, if the entire buffer is owned by the town, it means that there's aspects of that we would still like to retain as part of an amenity for this development, because this is a new understanding for us and the buyers in the market that we've been talking to.
Right. It's a pretty strong point on the part of our buyer focus group. We understand it. Again.
And marketability.
Yeah, and marketability. So, and it makes sense, because, otherwise you'd have to park your car, take your kayak and go down on the trail and like loop it all the way around when you've got this wonderful wharf, if you want to put in for your kayak that's right there. So, just,
And that wouldn't preclude the town from having, if the town wanted to establish another waterfront access point from the trail, you could do that also. But we'd like to have 2 points of access for residents to take kayaks down across the town-owned buffer to the shoreline.
The town could also just do it on its own if it owned the buffer.
That's what I'm saying, the town could also establish additional.
Right, without these two private ones.
Private ones.
We didn't assume that it would be the logic for us was that you now have the wharf. If someone's going to load, I'm a kayaker, I know you are too, if you're going to load your kayak on something, you're probably not going to haul it down there, you're probably just going to go to the wharf.
yeah, because the wharf's so much more convenient.
Just from a logic
It has the
standpoint.
ramp, it
whereas
has
someone
everything,
who's
yeah.
living here, actually, it's in enough close proximity, they wouldn't be loading it on their car, they'd just be able to simply launch
But
it
you might
down there.
land here, like kayak from somewhere else and want to land and enjoy the benefits of the public open space, and so
Yeah.
you still might want one even if.
Right, from a water side, you
Right,
mean,
yeah.
right, from a waterside landing, I've kayaked all through there, and it's nice to know you can hop in and have lunch or something, but it's more of a waterside thing.
Right.
I don't see anybody hauling it down there versus going to the wharf.
So then I guess, then what does it matter if they're public, if you think they would mostly be utilized by the residents?
I'm-
Right? So for me too, just,
Yeah.
you guys talk a lot about how part of what's great about this neighborhood is how it's walkable, and it's walkable to our main street, and it folds into our community. And then on the other hand, but our residents want everything to be super exclusive. So like, you understand how that feels kind of different, right? It's Ernie saying it's important to your residents group that these kayak launches exist and be private.
Well, mostly because, again, where they'd be located is, access points through the areas and whatnot. It's not, the farm, the openness, there's a lot going on here. The trail, all these things we have provided, the multimodal trail for public access. So I think we do have a lot of public access here.
It gets back to marketability. We're trying to create a collection of amenities that will make it marketable, and that's an amenity. So we felt we should at least bring up history, why we're bringing up these requests now, because the ability to do this has changed now with the decision to move towards a different form of ownership than what we had anticipated
Right.
up until more recently. So we needed to bring it up.
Okay. We can deal with that some other time. We have consensus to keep the public, to make the buffer and the trail public. I'm certainly amenable to that being the landward side of the trail for whatever Kip needs to get his equipment to maintain the trail through there, whatever sort of right-of-way they need on that side of the trail. I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
This idea of, of launching kayaks is new. And
Well, the ownership change is new to us too, so we're trying to think through how that affects.
Right, we're trying to react to your, decision to make it public. And we're trying to keep the marketability, all the other things that, that have been expected based on the idea of it being private. So we're just trying to work with you to figure this out. That's all. And that's our, our approach is to have these two private and maybe a public landing as well.
So it wasn't an issue even when we brought the CAC on the site, because when we brought the CAC on the site last year, the CAC, Chip was there, everyone was there, we were all under the understanding that there was a 15-foot public trail easement. The discussion wasn't that it was, that this was going to be all owned by the town at that time. That's why this is coming up now.
Plus, again, the wharf is just a wonderful place to launch kayaks for the public, so it's there.
You've got
It's
the
2
kayak
blocks
launch
away,
there, which I love those launches,
So-
they're great.
That's kind of our thinking.
Another alternative might be to agree that you would lease some space for the HOA to put a storage thing, so that the town still owned it, but you could consider giving them the ability to have a rack there to store kayaks.
I mean, I would think there are options there, none of it compelling enough to me that we would change the condition about owning the trail and buffer.
I am just going to come back to the PUD language I cited before. So this is from Ordinance 12-2021. Small neighborhood convenience centers may include a number of things. Retail food establishments less than 3,500 square feet. No commercial, this is from the ordinance. No commercial establishments shall be constructed until 25% of the total planned residential units are completed. Number 2 there, planned commercial centers shall be a group of commercial lease uses compatible with the residential nature of the PUD. These may include, but are not limited to, medical and professional offices, general retail stores and food stores. Planned commercial centers shall be permitted only in a PUD of 200 acres or more. Obviously, that does not apply here. But the 25% is accurate in my reading.
I looked at it too, I don't want to challenge it right now.
I
think we need to
I
look
looked
it
at
up.
it too, and it's there.
It's with the exception of, there's a little clause in there, yeah.
You mean later it says it doesn't apply in TND?
Yes, it doesn't apply to, because I thought it was that too, and then I reread it, but I don't want to,
We can happily, I'm
no, I'm
difficult to
not gonna
offend.
challenge that until we both have that language right in front of
He
us.
has to sit up here with me and Jeff every
I
day.
need it in front of me, because I remember I thought that too, and then I went back and saw
We
this
can seek clarity, we'll
excludes-
seek clarity on
There's a little
that.
clause in there that changes it.
Well, between Sharon and Ryan, we can get it figured out.
All right.
I just want to make sure that we are accurate, that's all.
That's, me too. Any other things here? Do we want to move forward with the first reading, or?
There is one other thing I need direction on related to, it's specific to growth allocation, so it's something that has to be dealt with now, is the language regarding substantial completion within 3 years and what that applies to.
Or did we talked about that including all, was sewer, public streets, public sewer, the trail?
Yes.
Right.
I know.
I think what we've talked about, or at least what Sharon and I have talked about, is the public streets for which we've received sewer allocation. If the decision is the town wants all of these to be public streets, we certainly can't go in and construct all of the streets and all of the utilities if we don't have sewer allocation and a plat for all of the lots. I think the concept was, given the constraints that you may have if you elect to allocate sewer capacity incrementally, that we would construct the public street and the sewer extensions for the lots for which capacity has been allocated.
That sounds fine to me. I mean, sort of pending the public-private nature of the development, but all public roads, the sewer and water mains, the 2 pump stations, the perimeter trail, and the internal trail. Was a staff recommendation that I'm inclined to agree with, subject to sewer allocation.
Yeah, both
Yeah, I think that
pump
makes
stations
sense.
would be necessary. Yep.
What are the thoughts on the first reading? We want to move forward with that?
Can we, with the conditions just sort of loose, or are we really, I just want to make sure we're not basically starting the process over when we actually have the written conditions.
So there's 2 things that'll be attached to the ordinance. There'll be findings of fact that go through the ordinance standards for growth allocation, and then there'll be these conditions. We don't have a draft of either of those currently before you. You could introduce it, but you're going to have to add those things later and then continue with the process and whatever that ends up being after it's a full, complete package.
When would we anticipate having that?
We've got a lot of direction tonight. We could prepare a draft. I would expect that you would still need to tweak it when you have the 5 council members present, because there were a couple things that we have not resolved here tonight because of that.
And the findings of fact, is that something staff is developing?
I think Ryan has a draft that he will give me, and then I will revise as needed for that. Chris Kubiak also in his staff report to the Planning Commission went through all of the different standards and made a recommendation for a finding on those. So we have a pretty good basis to get that done.
And that memo was in council's packet last week from Chris. And I believe it's on the town website now. So why don't we move first reading to June 23rd? And formally put it on the agenda as first reading, assuming we get conditions and findings of fact drafted. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, that feels good to me.
Okay. Anything else on Carter Farm? Yes, ma'am.
Is there
We'd
any
love-
possibility we could be on the planning commission agenda for July?
We don't set the planning commission agenda.
It was being held for this process, until this process was finished. We were told.
Somebody told us we couldn't go.
We did tell them they could not go, and the reason was, some of these decisions you're making tonight have a significant effect on the site plan. For instance, if you all go with public roads, they have to redesign, and it doesn't make sense to go too far down a process, which is contrary to what the council is doing. We didn't want to get too far ahead of the council. And the growth allocation process anticipates that there's not 2 subdivision plats or 2 site plans, but there's 2 different processes that call for those things to be completed. And growth allocation is one of them, and it anticipates that the subdivision plat or the site plan wouldn't occur till after the council grants that growth allocation. So that's,
But what we'd like to do at least is have if we're on the planning commission agenda for discussion, even, we understand they can't take an action on a site plan, but you've provided clarification on a number of points tonight. The street issue, notwithstanding, that may have to still be resolved. But if we can at least be on their agenda for the purpose of having discussion, we can continue conversations about commercial or continue other conversations, understanding that they don't have the authority to vote until growth allocation is final. That would allow us to advance.
And their public hearing wouldn't occur,
Right,
because they have to do a public hearing.
but, yeah, after,
That wouldn't happen until after growth allocation.
you have concerns as council, planning commission has concerns. We want to work to answer both sets of concerns simultaneously, please.
Yeah, but we're not in the habit of setting the planning commission's agenda.
right. That's something that staff will talk to the
Okay.
chair of the planning commission, and she can decide whether it's appropriate for that in July or not.
Okay. I did find the language.
Good.
Okay. we'll deal
Thank
with
you
that.
all very much for your patience.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'd love to talk about sewer allocations while we're here.
Yeah?
All in favor, say aye.
Again, we wrote a
Probably
memo.
don't want that to happen tonight, I suspect.
Well, I'll be, just a few key points, okay?
I'd want the full council here if I was you.
Okay, well, just informationally while,
I would hold my information until the full council's here if
Okay.
I was you.
okay, fine, thank you.
That's your decision. I mean, you know,
I'm listening to,
okay. I mean, you know, we don't, I am not of the mind that we have allocation to provide you. I understand that there are allocations on paper, right? But I listen to my public works director, my town manager that tell me that, you know, those allocations do not exist in the real world. Okay?
okay. Well,
I'm happy to hear your response to that.
that's, you know, in our conversations with the town manager, that's not our understanding exactly. You know, the number of 180 was thrown out. We understand there's issues with the sewer plant. We've asked for less than that. But again, I'll prefer that we do this in front of all 5 members of the council.
Because you're not asking for that much less than that. That and a heavy rainstorm is really what you're.
Yeah, so,
So, I mean,
yeah,
in my own defense, I guess I'll say, and I've said this before, I mean, there are times during wet seasons, which we tend to be having more of these days, where it's a lick and a promise whether or not we're discharging to the Corsica River, incurring a daily fee from the Maryland Department of the Environment. And so while these allocations certainly, ma'am, I think on paper they exist, absolutely. But in terms of burdening the system, now, I would like this process to move forward for you guys, I mean, for this development, because I'm not hostile to the development, right? And we're going to, in my opinion, need to defer the allocation decision until some other point, when we know what the state's going to fund.
okay, well, we'd like to continue the conversation, please.
Sure, yeah.
'Cause, yeah, we have, I think there's information that we can offer that may, yeah, be impactful.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Just one question. Corsica River Conservancy had sent a letter of support back in April, and that wasn't read into the record necessarily for the GA. I just wonder, how do I go about doing that? Because I have the letter.
Consider it submitted.
Thank you.
I don't know that I remember seeing this.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure it was part of this record, so thank you.
We are going to move into new business, bulk pickup option for the community.
That was going to be a discussion from Eric.
All right. Reports of boards and commissions, Maryland Municipal League.
I have nothing other than MML conference is coming up in a little over a week. And a few of us are going, and so hopefully we will learn a lot there. That's all I got.
Council of Governments.
Nothing to report.
The Planning Commission's efforts to refresh the comprehensive plan continue. We had a good meeting last night, and I think moving towards resolution on some of those things, so excited about that. Do we have a town manager, department head report?
We do.
All right.
Let me find my notes here. So I have a, this was not in your packet, and if the council doesn't, this is for discussion, but we had a part-time employee come to us asking about the possibility of benefits for part-time employees. We only have one permanent part-time employee, and we said that we would discuss it with the council. And I don't know if you want this or not, because this has got information, but, need one more? We were requesting the council's consideration to provide a permanent part-time employee's health care benefits, 20 hours or more. We had discussed it with our HR manager, Crystal, who talked to our broker, and they just have to amend the eligibility of the plan. Am I saying that right, Crystal?
The eligibility requirements.
Requirements for the
of the
plan.
plan.
And of course, your budget is already struck. So when I talked to Karen, our finance officer, if the council were to consider it based on the percentage share,
Cost share.
cost share, could be covered by encumbering remaining expenses from Main Street and economic development from this year's budget, FY '22. So that is a request to the council.
What do we pay toward our staff?
Our normal
Now.
full-time staff is $85.15.
Okay. So this shows at 85 and all the way down to 60.
Yeah, just to give the council, if you were to consider it, so the very first column is what that full cost would be for that employee. And then we wanted to give the council a choice of the different percentages to consider.
Not all other governments, if they do offer part-time, offer the same percentage as they do the full-time employees. So,
So at 60%, it's $7,300 that the town is paying.
correct.
Annually.
Do they have access to our health insurance if they want now? Like
No.
Not at all.
Current eligibility is full-time employees that are working 40 hours a week.
My preference would be to keep it that way. Not offer health insurance benefits to part-time employees, but that's just my preference.
How long has he been a part-time employee?
Almost 10 years.
This would impact one individual currently, but
Correct.
in the future, we would budget, if we budgeted for additional part-time employees, this would be part of the calculus.
Correct.
And it would be dependent upon if it was a permanent part-time employee
Correct.
scheduled to work 20 or more hours a week. So that's where
The difference is.
the difference, because if we're hiring a temporary part-time, they would not qualify.
Right.
They would not be eligible. If you're hiring a permanent part-time employee that would only be working 10 hours a week, they would not be eligible.
They'd have to work 20 hours or more.
They would have to be budgeted and scheduled to be working 20
A certain
hours a week, yeah, or more.
Can we have some time to think about
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
Chief, is that everything?
No, sorry. So code enforcement, there were 10, inquiries this, past month for the month of May. They've all been closed but three are still open. We have, offered a verbal offer to, a grant writer. And he is local to Maryland, the only applicant that we got, so he is familiar with all of the grants that we currently do have now. We received an email earlier this week for a letter of interest for the Rural Maryland Economic Development Fund, and one of the funding eligibility is for infrastructure, water, sewer infrastructure. So we submitted the letter of interest today, and we outlined items that were part of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade that we know would not be covered by MDE. So hopefully we will get the opportunity to apply for the actual grant for that. And that is all I have for town manager.
Chief of Police.
Good evening. I'm pleased to hear that offer's been made to the grant writer, which will segue me into, I've recently spent time writing grants for police recruiting and retention, body armor, and safe schools through the Maryland Center of School Safety. We're actually hoping to get approval and receive funding from these grants to help to improve the security and safety of our officers, residents, and visitors. Our staff recently attended and successfully completed training in de-escalation techniques, NIBRS and UCR, which is our state and federal mandated crime reporting, which that system's transitioned to a new platform, defense tactics, and we had one officer attend a child first safety training. Our officers also ensured the safety of our citizens during the Goodwill Fire Department Cash Bash, Queen Anne's County Senior Parade, the senior graduation, and a recent meeting at the Queen Anne's County Board of Education, and we're looking forward to doing the same for the First Friday event tomorrow. Our officers will have a strong presence at that event, and we look forward to being able to be much more involved in the First Friday events as they progress. I will be prepared to present a recommendation for our second phase of the 2-hour parking for the town of Centreville during our next meeting.
Great, thank you.
That's it.
Any questions for the chief?
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Nice job.
Town attorney, anything else?
Nope.
Finance officer? Karen?
Oh, sorry, me.
It's all right.
All right, just 28 days left before we close out the fiscal year, and I am having our audit kickoff meeting with the auditor 10 June. So this year we'll have the regular audit and the single audit based on the money we received.
Great.
And that's all I got.
Public Works.
Trying to keep this brief for you.
Are you done yet?
You'll wish I was. Have some poor news to forward to. We had 3 utility workers submit their resignation this week. So we're very short-staffed when you consider, I think that makes us 5 down on the utility, on the street side, and 2 down on the water and wastewater side. We do have a few that are in background checks. We do have 1 utility worker that will be starting on Tuesday.
June 7th. Yep,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, June 7th.
So,
God willing.
so with staffing that low, we're doing our best. And please bear with us. We're looking, talking to contractors to fill in the spaces until we're back staffed where we can handle the full-time grass mowing and weed eating and that type of stuff. We do have the staff to be able to assist with the First Friday event tomorrow night, so we'll have all the supplies there and stuff. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Are those people that have resigned are going on to bigger and better things?
They're
Other
moving, yes, they're moving on to other jobs, paying more money than what we are.
Dramatically more money, or
$2 an hour. One of them, another one is a little bit less than that,
Yeah,
but yes, it's roughly,
okay.
$2 an hour is about where it seems to average at.
And I have a comment on this from our town manager from London.
Is he watching this?
No, he said, when he emailed, today was the first day I've heard from him, so that, it's good he's taking his time. He just wanted to know, to let the council know he'll be bringing forward competitive salary discussions. The switch to our own staff originally saved us $300,000, but it won't hold up in this environment. So just wanted to pass that comment on to him.
Yep. We have held interviews pretty much continuously, weekly for 2 months now.
Yeah. And we have more scheduled for next week, and
They wash out, or what? They just don't.
Everything from, we've offered it to them and they wind up getting a better offer somewhere else before their start date. Some of them don't pass the background checks. We have a large number of applicants and we schedule an interview and they don't show up. So, and of course there is time, not everybody that applies is a fit for the job either. So,
well, and just to dovetail on to that, I've had experience with applicants where I get them all the way through background and they sign off on the final offer and we get a start date, and then they pull out saying that they were able to get a higher paying job. So it's just been very...
And they're not all, they're not all of them resigning and going to another utility or another municipality. Some of it's a total career change. So
Yeah, we're just finding that it's definitely a variety, that it's not, government or anything, it's all, a variety of other places that
All
they're.
across, all across the board. We're not the only ones in this situation, State Highway.
Thankfully.
Talking to the Queen Anne's County folks, they're in the same situation. It's
Yeah, they got bollard signs asking people to apply. So.
correct.
Well, and according to the article that I was reading through SHRM, I mean, across the nation,
Yes.
there's more job, the job availability right now is outnumbering, applicants. So,
I suggested to Kip asking State Highway to use one of their VMS boards on the opposite side of the street and say, Town of Centreville is hiring.
Town of Centreville also.
yeah, ditto.
Anything else?
Other than that, we're plugging away, we're still fighting it, so, and didn't mean to steal Crystal's thunder.
Oh,
on
no,
that.
no. Karen likes it because I'm crossing him off. But you could have at least mentioned one positive thing, since I'm right after you anyway, is we were able to, I did meet with one of the representatives of the Workforce Initiative, what's today? Yesterday. And we were able to get 2 of our employees that had already applied, registered for the funding, and now they're going to be placed into the class waiting list. However,
For CDL, yeah.
for the CDL, I apologize, for the CDL course. But it looks as though the classes they're starting to schedule is going to be in August. So as soon as they receive all of the documents and everything we've uploaded with those employees, I'll be communicating with the staff at the college to get the employees scheduled. So at least we're moving forward with that. So that's a plus. But yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to mention that. So
You can keep the mic if you want, if you have anything else.
So I was crossing off things as Kip was covering them, but I guess the only other update I have is just trying to continue with the open enrollment. We have that until June 8th. That's the end date. And just I'm preparing or continuously working on our plan renewal documents. Yeah, that's all I have.
Town clerk, in your other role?
Yes. Do you want the good news or the bad news?
Start with the bad news.
So the bad news is our vendor that we use for our fireworks contacted me, and they are not able to get shells in. So they gave me a contact for another fireworks vendor, and I contacted them. The way that vendor works is they kind of line up all their shows, like their technician people don't even go home, like they just stay and move from one, and they could not work us into their schedule. So I also contacted the county because they are also having fireworks and asked who they used, and they did give me the name, but they were giving me the name of another company that they knew of. She was supposed to check with someone. That was yesterday when I talked to them. So we are a little bummed right now about the whole fireworks display. The other issue is that there's kind of mixed feedback on whether any part of the YMCA building will be erected by July 1st. According to YMCA and their construction schedule, there will be. Other people say, no, they're not going to be ready yet. If there is any type of building there, we cannot set off fireworks at our current site. So.
There's a lot of bad news.
Yeah.
What's
So
the good news?
What's that?
What's the good news?
Do we have any more, we can still talk about fireworks if we
Yeah,
want.
I'm not real sure how the council wants to move forward with, I mean, we knew by next year, we were gonna have to come up with another location for the whole fireworks if we were to continue to do them. I just was not prepared to do it this year. And we have talked about, okay, let's find another site for the fireworks. We have the event that's at the high school, and then everyone needs to leave and go travel to where. So I don't know where the council wants to go. If we can't find fireworks, do we still want to have the event? Do we want to hold off on everything until next year, or?
What, has staff thought about any other viable alternative even in the out years?
We have well, the first place that everyone throws out is the wharf. If we did the wharf, you have to do a barge in the water, so that's probably not going to be viable.
There's nowhere, I mean, we're talking thousands of people
Yes.
parking at the wharf.
I know. Yeah, the wharf park would be perfect for everything, but yeah, we don't have enough room for people to park. White Marsh Park has been thrown out. That would be up to the county if they would let us use that. I even measured if we were to ask the county and do it in the middle of the field behind the high school, and everything is too close when I did the, map measurement. So,
Virtual fireworks.
yeah. virtual fireworks. I mean, the event I love, but I think the draw to the event is that you get the fireworks afterwards.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to compete with, there's fireworks all over the place.
Yeah. So, I haven't gotten, it doesn't have to do with the fireworks, but I haven't gotten there yet. So. They can't hear you up here, George. You gotta go to the microphone.
Depending on how much you like fireworks, this might be the good news.
So I'm not sure how the council wants to move forward.
I mean, it sounds
We are
like
now less than a month away from our fireworks. Yeah.
we
so.
did have a save the date for fireworks in the Centreville circular that went out.
Well, that's what Carol and I talked about, and I said, put the save the date, but don't put any details, because I'm still not sure about, at that point, I was still waiting to hear back from the other vendor, so. And
Well,
I
don't
probably, and
think
I
we can
will
do it.
move on from next year, or if we continue with fireworks in the out years, I'm not real sure what's happened last year and this year. This vendor we've used for probably the last 9 years, and they have been wonderful. They're the vendor that at the last minute last year changed the date on us.
Yeah.
And then through fewer shells.
Yes,
And
they
they bailed
did
on
fewer
us this
shells
year.
because the price increased, and so,
But we still increased what we gave them.
yes, we did
Still got
increase.
fewer shells.
Yes, yes. So, I'm not sure, again, how the council wants to move forward.
Well, I am famously cranky about fireworks, so, sounds like we're not having fireworks in 2022, but I don't, I guess the question is about the event, really, right?
I mean, to me, if we don't have fireworks, we should scrap the event. It does not make, I mean, there's just, you're not going to get people there, I don't think, on July 1st for something without fireworks. I personally love the fireworks, I'm
I
bummed.
do too. I do too. I like the whole event and the fireworks, but, yes.
So you've exhausted all your fireworks options.
The last one is if the name that the county gives me, if that's viable. But again, I don't have high hopes, because we are, like, now, it's probably gonna be, I'm not here tomorrow, so it'll be next week, and we're less than a month away. So, I mean, I would definitely contact them to find out, but,
I would say let's exhaust that option and then bail.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
there you go, thank you.
Thank you
You had
very
good
much.
news?
I do have good news.
That's really good.
It is really good.
Nothing close.
Fireworks, Steve.
Very good, and now I'm trying to find my piece of paper that I had all, here we go. So, our Main Street just received a $25,000 grant So the Main Street Improvement Program, which we have applied for in the past, we did our wayfinding signs through that grant. Carol applied for the recent workshop tech services that she did, the business resiliency program she did, that was through Main Street Improvement. So they got an increase this year. They normally had $400,000 in their budget for MIP grants. It went to $1 million. So they basically just handed out money. Nobody really applied per se. So designated Main Street communities, which is what we are, received $25,000. And it is to cover capital and operating expenses. So Carol has to submit, basically it's quote unquote an application, but has to submit where she's gonna spend the money, how she's gonna spend it. And so we're gonna talk about that. She's gonna come back, she's gonna come to the June 23rd meeting to talk to the council about where she's looking at. Some of it is augmenting her current efforts to support our businesses, things that she can't necessarily get to by herself, meaning help with business promotion. I believe she said Western Auto is celebrating their 40th year in Centreville, and being able to get a press release out, acknowledging that. So it's those types of services. Take simple ribbon cutting and go a little bit further than that. She didn't tell me the details on that, so I don't know what she's thinking, but, and then right now the town currently pays the fee for the National Main Street designation fee, and she said this could pay for that. So those kinds of things. So that's the good news, is she got $25,000 grant.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
So, and that is all I have.
All right, we'll move to our second citizens forum.
Weren't really watching as much. Kara Voigt, Front Street, and I've also got good news. I just wanted to kind of let everybody know that last weekend being Memorial Day weekend, we live down by the wharf, and there was just so much activity down there, positive. The parking lot was full in a good way. There was a lot of boat traffic. But good boat traffic. There were a lot of dinghies that came up and tied up and then walked up to, into town or docks or whatever, and then walked back. A lot of groups that was, daily over and over. A lot of people at the playground. And so I just want to say, it's great that all that work is paying off. So, let's keep it going. And we have water at the public slips too.
Yeah. That was that was the last thing, the other thing I wanted to report on good news is all 10 slips are now leased as of this week. So we went through, we started out with a list of 60 on the wait list, and we went through about 25 of them before we leased out 9 of the 10 slips. It's been a process. So.
I know that was a lot of hard work for you, so.
It is a lot of hard work.
While you're here, Chairperson.
Wait, I'm not, don't sign me up for anything.
No. You have 6 full-time members of the Planning Commission, or
Correct.
We need a 7th.
We are
right?
short on one, correct.
We need a member of the Planning Commission.
We do.
If everybody's in attendance, we
Look out
have
into the ether and say,
the
if
risk
anyone
of-
would like to submit an application.
yes. So we should be recruiting people to serve both as regular members and as alternates of the Planning
Yes.
Commission.
Right.
We now run the risk of a 3-3 tie,
Correct.
which is
Right.
no
So we
good for
have
anyone.
room for 1 permanent member and 2 alternatives, so.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll get on it.
Okay. All right. I'll excuse myself. Thank you.
Council Roundtable, any other citizens wishing to comment? All right. Move to Council Roundtable. Councilperson Kaiser.
Yeah, so just a couple things. One, tomorrow is June 1st, Friday. Really excited about it. We had to cancel in May because of the weather, so looking forward to tomorrow. The barbecue food vendor will be back, a lot of other vendors, a free face painter, and the free arcade for kids on Lawyers Row. And just want to thank our town police and our town public works for their help getting set up tomorrow. And also want to point out that the spots directly in front of, like where Coliseum are, those few spots will be blocked for carry-out parking only to help our local restaurants have their regular turnover of people picking up orders. So yeah, that's it on First Friday. And the other thing is I've gone to the farmer's market every week since it reopened, and it's been really great. Last Sunday, I rode my bike on the trail, on the Millstream Trail, the whole distance, and then went to the farmer's market and had coffee, which is not something you can typically do in Centreville. And so I just would really encourage everyone to support the farmer's market. There's a ton more vendors this year. I've been able to buy a ton of produce and things that you couldn't really do last year. So just would encourage everyone to support the farmer's market.
I second that.
What days of the week is that?
It's Sundays from 9 to 12, and this year it's every Sunday, which is great. And there's just been a really good mix of vendors, so.
And vendors kind of from all over, too. We're
Yeah.
pulling from Preston, I saw, and it's good. It's good stuff. Anything else?
Nope.
Vice President Keel.
Nothing.
He said beat that.
By that time of year.
I will also yield back. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Third.